Success stories and interviews with game changers and thought leaders who have overcome both in life and in business. Welcome to Vertical Momentum.
Hey guys, it's me, the comeback coach. I just want to tell you that I love Anchor. I have over 350 episodes on Anchor. If you want to have your own podcast on Anchor, let me know. First of all, it's free. Free. Also, there's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your own podcast where you don't even need an editor, which is good for me because I'm a low-tech redneck. And now you can even add songs on Spotify to your episodes. So the possibilities are endless for what you can create, whether it's musical analysis, your own radio show, or something the world has never seen before. Also, Anchor will distribute your podcast everywhere for you, including Spotify, Apple, Google, and many, many more. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. So guys, if you are into podcasting, want to start your own podcast, definitely check out Anchor. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Guys, I love you. And remember, vertical momentum. The only way to go is but up. Can you hear me?
I can. How are you?
I'm doing truly amazing. How are you doing this morning?
Oh, I'm doing okay. You're my first appointment of the day.
Me too. I'm just waking up.
I'm in the East Coast, but I always say I work on West Coast time because it's the easiest one to serve everybody. Like I have clients right around the world, so I'm on East Coast, West Coast, and I'm up at 5 a.m. talking to Africa in their morning, and so I'm all over the place.
I'm on the East Coast. I'm in New Jersey, so I totally get it. And sometimes the time differences, especially like Australia, just kind of throws me for a loop. So, guys, welcome to Vertical Momentum, guys. This is going to be a great episode. We were on a couple-day hiatus, and I had to figure out what kind of amazing guest can I have that's going to start blowing up the show, and her name kept coming up. So if you have a business, if you're any questions about public relations, we're going to get into because it's something that I truly enjoy talking about. Branding also, same thing. But this young lady her new book is going to come out. I can't wait for that book to come out. I'm excited about that. She's changed the world, and she's actually, and I can't believe it when I read this, but I was so excited to read it, that she actually helped an innocent man off of death row. And I can't wait, or innocent inmate off of death row. I can't wait to talk about that. So Tracy, how are you doing today?
I am very good. Thank you so much. And yeah, thank you so much for mentioning that the case of Jimmy Dennis. He's absolutely factually innocent. And that was a good 20 years of our life and my husband and myself. And it's what actually led us to become publicists, even though that wasn't what we thought at the time. And these days he's actually free and he's a recording artist, R&B artist. So it's an amazing story. It's something that I'm really proud of.
So give us a little background on you, where you're from, and then we'll hop on into what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I'm in Toronto. I'm a Toronto girl. I'm in Hamilton now, 40 minutes down the highway from Toronto. So I'm up in Canada through COVID. When it's not COVID, I'm all over the place. I was all over America in 2019, from Los Angeles to Vegas to Ohio to Washington D.C. on different work projects. But I'm up here for now until border travel is cool again. And so I'm an international award-winning publicist now, working across borders and across industries. And it all started, 25 years ago when I was an entry-level sales rep. Myself and my husband we're activists, we're young activists, and we learned about the case of Jimmy Dennis, learned how to write press release, got media attention for that. And about 10 years after that, it suddenly hit us, hey, we could probably use the skills that we built doing that into actually a career doing messaging for other people. So that's how we got where we are today.
Now, it's pretty amazing. A lot of people think that it's hard to get on a lot of different press, and it's really not. It's just, especially now that we got news channels that are 24 hours a day,
Yeah.
so hungry for content.
A million different platforms. Yeah.
But you just have to, you can't be, excuse my language, I try not to curse on my show, but you can't be that a-hole that just like, hey, come interview me. And,
Yeah.
then they hear crickets when they
Yeah.
get no responses. So talk to us a little bit about that. Cause we are in a modern day where, podcasts and
Yeah.
different new platforms, but I think old school of treating people good and building relationships still works. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to media, I'm old school media girl. I start with, people come to me and I'm thinking radio, television, newspapers, magazines, and then also, of course, new media. Your mainstream blogs like Huffington Post and podcasts are huge. And it's funny when I was always obviously setting my clients on podcasts, but when I started doing podcasts myself, and I've been on over 180 of them in the last year on, business, on entrepreneurship, on leadership, on authenticity in business, and mostly on media messaging and how to get how to build your brand and your reputation for thought leadership across any industry. And what I've noticed, and you mentioned podcasts extremely effective. I first came on them thinking about them as another media, which they are obviously, radio, TV, like I said, newspaper and podcasts. But also podcasts have developed in 2020 and 2021 into a whole new beast, a hybrid media. So not only are they doing for you what media will do for you and what marketing will do for you, but they're also huge. I mean, I can't express enough how huge it is when it comes to networking. That is actually important, for your business to survive in this new landscape that we're working in. So marketing, media, and networking is all what we find in doing podcast guest appearances. So yeah, those are huge. But even in terms of accessing mainstream media, people think it's a mystery or they don't know how to do it. And there's all kinds of little tips and tricks. It's not all about the press release, which is, putting together your messaging, and you have to understand the difference between editorial and advertorial, which is why a lot of business owners don't understand why they don't get any play in the media, because you can't approach the newsroom the way you would approach an ad department. It's not like that. You have to consider yourself as a source providing valuable information to the audience of that newsroom. That's the only way they're going to be looking at you. If it's just, oh hey, I opened a new business, hey come on down, and you don't. That's where entrepreneurs, 80 to 90% of entrepreneurs don't have an understanding of how media works and how to reach out to those newsroom and editors, and that's where they get kind of lost in the shuffle. You have to understand the difference between editorial and advertorial. That's the huge thing.
Okay, so now because like I'm a newbie to this, not to podcasting, but in the whole PR world.
Yeah.
So tell us what the difference is.
So advertorial is what you're thinking of already. We're, as entrepreneurs, we know about our product, why we're better than the next guy, what you want to tell your customers. All that stuff is advertorial. Editorial is an actual story. So either telling your story, your brand story, but again, your personal story may be a story that you can get in the media, or topical. Say you have an expertise, you hear something in the news, and based on your business expertise, you turn around to your friend and say, oh boy, that blah blah blah. Well, that might be because information that you have that other people don't have. So when you see a story about it, you spark the thought. That thought could be the basis of a topical press release. Topical press release is where media is already talking about something. They're likely to continue talking about it, and they need a new voice or a new perspective. So if you're able to comment on something based on some verifiable expertise, quite often you can just reach out and be like, hey, saw that story about red hats. This is what I know about red hats. I'm just naming a product. It wouldn't be a product. I should have said an example more. But that would be a topical release where something is already going on in the news. You have an angle on it based on whoever you are or what your expertise is. You let them know, and then you become valuable to the editorial aspect of the story because you're helping them to continue to move forward a piece that they have to talk about. Another way of looking at it is think about when you think about a story you might want to place in a newspaper as an entrepreneur or on the 22-minute news broadcast. Think about, is that actually the kind of thing I would expect to see in a 22-minute news broadcast? Or is it more the kind of thing I might see maybe not on page A1, A2, or A3, where the major international news is, but might I see a story like mine on page A18? Or would it be more likely to be in the lifestyle department or something like that? So when you think like that, you'll get a better idea and edit yourself of who you should actually be contacting. So the newsroom is not, the newsroom, the editorial board, the magazine, they're not the advertising department. They're not there just to, promote your business. If you're approaching them, you have to have something that's actually of value to them. So you have to be thinking like a news department, not like an entrepreneur.
I love that. And I tell a lot of people that, that facts will tell, but a story will sell. And,
yeah.
Everybody loves a story, like mine is, I've come back from drug addiction, alcoholism, homelessness, PTSD, the traumatic brain injury, and now blindness, to come back and still be able to do what I do. But if I would just tell somebody, hey, we got one of the top rated podcasts in the world, come listen to us, they would probably just like, all right, just put this one at the bottom of the bottom of the pile. So, I know there are a lot of, because you go out to a lot of veterans and entrepreneurs, and sometimes both. A lot of guys will put out, or girls will put out a press release, and it gets buried quick. What are some of the things that they can do to make your press release pop?
So the key, number one, is the subject line. Doesn't matter how great your press release is, if that header, which is the email subject line, if you're sending it by email, it doesn't pop, nobody's opening your release. Think about the way you use your own. I was just writing about this in my book. Think about the way you use your own email. We do not open up every email that hits our email box. You edit before you even click on the email, and you decide, oh, I don't know what that is. And delete. That's not something. Delete. And then you open up the ones you care about. So think how much more a newsroom does that when they get 900 emails a day, most of which are not going to be of interest to them. They are not opening up every single one to look for that hidden news story. They're looking the way you do, and judging by the subject line. So your subject line has to have your who, what, where, why. Your subject line has to have your catch. It has to really get them, or they're not opening the rest up to see your beautiful email, right? Other point to that is a press release should only have one main idea. You don't want to overwhelm them. You don't ever want them to question, wait, what's the story here? Wait, what are you telling me? It's a one concept, one pager is for the win. And another good key is I don't send them out in bulk. I find it's most effective to take a few hours and actually send it out specifically to the target specific reporters, and make the header, hi Bob, here's a great story I thought you'd like for immediate release, instead of just, for immediate release, blah, blah, blah. So those are some things that I found work, actually targeting it. I mean, not obviously you're going to be sending it. You're not going to send to every single reporter, hi, Bob. But I mean, your targeted ones, find a few targeted ones, find 20 that you think might really take it, and actually, approach them personally and tell them why you think this is a good story for them. Other ways, if you have something that might really be something that they'd be excited about, that it might actually be something where they'd want an exclusive, reach out to one TV station or one radio station first in your town, mostly TV that wants exclusive, not radio, and see and suggest to them and let them say no before you go to the next one. Because sometimes, so you want to usually you want to blanket it widely. Sometimes, like with an op-ed, for example, with a newspaper, you have to pick one. If you want to be in the New York Times with that original op-ed piece of writing, you're not going to get that in the Houston Chronicle. It's got to be one or the other. So when you're doing like an op-ed piece suggesting an article to a newspaper, you have to send it to them, and then you wait 5 to 10 days, which is really frustrating, especially if it's something timely, till they approve it or deny it. Usually it'll be quicker if it's something timely. And then if they say no, you go on to the next one. So those are mainstream media. But as you said, there's, with this media world that we live in now, there's a million platforms where you can start literally today. And you don't have to start with the press release. You can go to, there's a bunch of services that publicists use that that entrepreneurs can try to use if they figure out sort of the things like the pitch and the difference between, like we said, editorial and advertorial. Then they can go and use services like we use, free services like Help a Reporter Out, like Source Bottle, like Podcast Matchmaker, and Pod Match, and all those different things to connect you with media sources. And the first ones I mentioned, Help a Reporter Out and Source Bottle, those are things where reporters from everything you can think of, from Reader's Digest, from Oprah.com, from the New Yorker, New York Magazine, everything you can think of. When they're under deadline, they go there. So you'll have a reporter on there, and these come in 3 times a day. With a deadline of 3 o'clock Tuesday for Reader's Digest, I'm looking for real estate agents who can talk about blah, blah, blah. I'm looking for entrepreneurs who can talk about mindset. So literally all the media uses these sources because, as you said, it's a different world these days. Everybody's not, going down to the restaurant to meet their sources anymore. It's all on electronic. So we all have access to a lot more than we would have before. So there's all kinds of little tips and tricks you can take advantage of as an entrepreneur if you have more time than money, to figure out some of the stuff yourself. But if you've already got a marketing budget and you're doing pretty well and you haven't utilized PR, it's really worth thinking about, especially when you consider that while 80 to 90% of entrepreneurs don't think about this, there's not one corporation or major company in the world that doesn't have a PR/communications department. So right there, that shows you what a disadvantage entrepreneurs are putting themselves that when they're not considering PR.
And I love that, and I love Help a Reporter Out. When I first started, somebody told me about it, and I got some letters, some things that were published, and I think that helps you makes you an authority. Because a lot of people don't realize that the word author is just short for authority, and a lot of people, like you said, it's a free service, and like once you get quoted in one thing or two things, it seems like everything opens up to you.
Exactly. It's like, now I started with 1 or 2 podcasts, 5 articles. Now I've got there's 50 articles about me, or not 50, maybe 20. There's I've literally been on over 180 I'm losing count. I have no idea. And now when I pitch myself, or when I say, hey, you should interview me for this, or you quote me on this article or whatever, and they see 180 other reporters who did before. Well, now I'm like a business celebrity to people, and everybody quotes me. So it's literally just a matter of putting in the time, and that is hugely valuable. It's not just an ego trip. And the way that matters in business is obviously, for the obvious, it better than advertising, because it does the same thing as advertising, except for that third-party credibility where somebody else is saying it about you. You're not buying it, and you can't buy it, right? But also, just so that credibility, and what else was I going to say? Just the understanding of what you do, people, so for customers to choose you over somebody else, for example, or to differentiate yourself from the competitor. But what's really been brought to my attention recently, even beyond that, is when I had a client who was in funding phase. They had just gone through, or they were going through their pre-seed funding, and now they're going into their seed funding, and they made $500,000 in pre-seed. Now they're up for their, looking for 3 or 4 in seed. And she literally said to me after 6 weeks of working together, "You've changed my life and my business in my life." And when I was like, I talk about this in podcasts a lot because it's indicative of what it can do. And when I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, you've made investors take us more seriously," which is huge, because that we're talking real money there. We're talking the difference between your business going and not going, so people dropping $1 million on you because they saw a few articles and they see that you're getting international attention, and this one's talking to you and that one's so basically it just brings the credibility of what you're saying, to the fore. And my job as a publicist is to build up that person, not to sell their product. That's their job, or the marketing or sales department's job. I have nothing to do with that. My job is to build them up, so when they open their mouth to sell their product or to build their brand or whatever else, people listen and they have that gravitas behind them.
Yeah, and I truly love that, and I think a lot of things what you're talking about is branding. Personal branding. Like I was, talking to Gary, Gary V, and we were talking about just branding, about how you are your brand. Like say, in the United States, Michael Jordan is godlike,
Yeah.
and if he showed up one day wearing an Adidas outfit with wearing Adidas shoes, everybody would lose their mind because he is known as Jordan
Yeah.
for Nike.
Yeah.
but he's had a message for what, over 30, 40 years now, but it's a consistent message. Do you see a lot of problems where a lot of companies don't have consistent messaging?
Um, you mean bigger companies? Bigger brands seem to be pretty good on the consistent messaging. Smaller companies or brands, they're not. I don't know if they always along the same lines. They think about their marketing, but again, I don't think they have a PR component, so they don't really think about that side or the you know how. I mean, they're similar, but they're different too. So I think if more entrepreneurs really were thinking about the PR component, that would be less of a problem because their marketing departments and their PR person or PR worker would be working together more consistently and more and across the board, across platforms, they'd have a more consistent message.
Okay, now I have a question, because thank you. And by the way, I just want to say thank you so much for spending time with me and hanging out. I truly appreciate
Oh
you.
no, thank you. I appreciate it too. It's fun.
But a lot of people I've ran into, because, like I said, I was in in the health and fitness industry for over 32 years, and when I first started out, everything was magazine, newspaper, and now everything
Mhm.
is Instagram,
Yeah,
Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and sometimes you'll see these old school publicists. Well, and they still thinking, well, we're going to do it the old school way.
yeah,
Where unfortunately, if you ever have a company that says, well, it's just the way we always done it, you
yeah.
know, like Radio Shack, you're going to be out of business soon.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. Or even people who don't, they're just always, maybe they've only done a little advertising, a little marketing, whatever, and they just don't, they don't think about social media or media at all, or any kind of presence. They're just doing their job, which is fine. And I'm sure your customers love you, and you're doing an amazing job. But the guy that your competitor who may not even be doing as good a job as you, if he's acing media, and I mean mainstream media and social media and whatever, then he's moving forward and you're falling behind. It doesn't matter if you don't see it yet in your business, you are. And so people, honestly, they cannot, we're just not in the landscape anymore where you can work the way you did 20 years ago. Yeah, you have to have a presence. Building your brand and having a media presence is huge for business today. I know that can be intimidating for some people who just want to do their thing, and they don't, they're shy, or maybe they don't feel like they can have a media presence. There's different ways to have a media presence. You don't have to be, with bright red hair like me on radio and TV saying, "Hey, look at me." You can, like we were talking about hair, those help a reporter out in most instances with that, getting quoted in Reader's Digest, New York Times, New Yorker, all those ones we mentioned, and I'm sure you in some hugely high profile ones too. You probably didn't even talk to a reporter half the time. It's all by email.
yeah.
They send the questions, you respond to the questions, done, boom, you're in good housekeeping. So sometimes it's like that, and quite often it's not even where you have to be verbally talking to somebody. So there are a whole bunch of opportunities to everybody's comfort level.
Now, I've also noticed that, a lot of people, when they start a, business, and they try to go to all the mainstream media, but they kind of ignore their local warm market. And they
Mm-hmm.
don't realize that sometimes it's the local TV that will put something out, and then all of a sudden it'll go viral and it'll go everywhere.
Absolutely. And people have to think small and large too. Like some people think you have to start small, other people think you have to, it goes both ways. You don't, I mean, by starting small, you don't just start with a podcast. You can start with television, your mainstream TV, big or small. You can start with your but like you said, local is amazing. Local weekly, but your local TV, your local weekly paper as opposed to your daily, those have a mandate, specifically a community mandate to report on the community. So it's a lot lower bar for what you have to be doing newsworthy in order to get on there. um, Local newspapers are really good places for quote unquote puff pieces as well. Not newspapers, sorry. Local business press, local weeklies, local monthly magazines that a lot of cities have. Those are really good places for not necessarily a news story, but a profile of an executive. That's where you can get that sort of profile in your story out there. Um, I like to tell the story too. You can sometimes go really big, like whether big or small. People think you have to go. Um, People think you should ignore the small. Number one, no. I'm a hugely high profile publicist. My time is to the minute. And yet I'll do a small podcast just as much as I'll do a big giant one. I don't care so much about the number of listeners today as I do about the format. If the format is on brand, if it's well done and professional, and the format is on brand, something that has 20 listeners today in terms of a podcast could have 2,000 listeners tomorrow. It's not like radio and TV where the segment goes out and then it's done. With a podcast, the listenership continues to grow as they build their podcast. New listeners come in and listen to previous episodes, and so it's not a matter of 20 people listen and that's it. And also this is really interesting. The guy who invented one of the pod match, sir, I think was pod or maybe matchmaker, I don't know. He was interviewed on a podcast the week before I was interviewed on a business podcast. And the podcaster told me that he had made a really good point. They were saying, in terms of audience, most business people, most entrepreneurs, if you said to them, hey, I'm having an event in town tomorrow and we're going to have 30, 40 people there. Did you want to come on stage and talk about your product? Most business people would be like, yeah, for sure. But if it's a podcast and there's only 50 people, they think, oh, no, there's no point. Sure, there is. Like I said, and the bigger point is not, for me as a publicist, I'll tell my clients, it's not even so much the audience that hears it, initially. It's about the fact that you now have that link that you can put on your page, and also the SEO. When people search your name, other people are saying great things about you. There's that credibility, about that third party credibility again. So it doesn't matter if it's small or large. And the other token, it doesn't necessarily have to be small either. I had a client, I still have her now, years later, 26 years old. She had been in zero media. She's a life coach. And she's amazing, but on paper there was not much of the time to separate her from any other life coach, right? So she was like, how can I differentiate myself? And she thought if she started to share her personal story, then it would, people would see what she had been through and that they would want her to work with them. So she reached out to me and she wanted to share her story of a successful life in spite of bipolar. So literally the next day, I found a reporter at Good Housekeeping magazine who was doing a piece on women with bipolar who are willing to speak out about it. We got her in that print issue of Good Housekeeping, the print issue, 150-year-old iconic magazine. And that was her first, step out of the gate, a cover story. She wasn't a picture on the cover, but the article was mentioned on the cover. I am not my mental illness. And so now, literally, for the last year and a half, anything we want to put her in, from anything talking about mental illness or inspiration or life coaching or getting above blah blah blah, all that stuff, they all interview her as seen in Good Housekeeping. It's that so, and that was her first thing off the gate. She had literally no media experience, so it can be small, it can be big. You just pitch widely. Life's a pitch. You never know what's going to work.
I love that. And, and it seems like once you start getting some traction, because like I interviewed a gentleman and now he's become a friend. His name is Steven Sims. Steve Sims is, he's a 7-8 figure earner, but, he does a lot of podcasts and he doesn't ever share them, because he's on like 8-10 a day. So It's like he doesn't really share them. And one of my friends, who's a friend of his, says, don't ask him about the Elton John thing. And I'm like, okay. So I didn't ask him. I actually went like really deep into his past and started asking him stuff that he was never asked on a podcast.
Oh, that's nice. People, we like that when that happens. Because, once you start doing a million of them, you're like, oh, my God, I'm boring. It's all the same questions, right? You're like...
So he said, in the beginning, he's like, oh, all right, Rich. He's like, I got 30 minutes. I'm like, okay, cool. So we started talking, and then we get to the 30-minute mark, and I'm like, Steve, I know you got to go. I appreciate you. He's like, no, let's hang out and talk a little bit. Let me tell you about Elton John. I'm like, wait a minute. I was not supposed to ask you about Elton John. Now you can So, talk to us about, like your story. I want to get into it. Is the thing that interested me the most. I mean, I love the PR stuff. I love all that. But the story about the gentleman on death row is what really interested me.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, when they, they only go for the things that are going to make headlines, but they don't go for the deep stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so talk about that a little bit. Going to like as you see a lot on LinkedIn. I'm big on LinkedIn, but usually after you're getting a connection request, like 30 seconds later, you're getting pitched, and you're like, "All right, can you date me a little bit
I
before?"
know, right? Oh
Yeah,
my God, I know. That annoys me so much. It's like,
ask me
wow,
to marry
hi.
me after you date me a few times. So can you talk about building relationships and how relationship capital is so important?
Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned LinkedIn because I rarely need to prospect anymore. Like now I have, literally 90% of my business is referral or repeat customers. So I'm not often having to prospect. But if I am in LinkedIn and I see an interesting project, once in a while I'll message someone. Or like, once in a while I'm like, oh, let me go see, I need to pump something up and let me go see what I can find. It's pretty rare these days, but I used to do it regularly in LinkedIn prospecting. And I've had so much success. It's funny because I have never bought anything or signed up for a service where somebody has messaged me on LinkedIn because they're usually so clumsy, like you said, right? And but yet I literally, if I send 20 messages today, and this is rare that I do this, but if I decide, hey, I'm gonna go find a new job, a new prospect, right? If I go send 20 messages right now on LinkedIn, I guarantee you I'm gonna have 2 new clients tomorrow. And that's consistent, or at least next week or whenever we talk. Because when I prospect on LinkedIn, I go, number one, I have 17,000 people on my LinkedIn. Most of them have added me or I've added them over the years, not to prospect them, just to have them. I have them there. We talk once in a while. Most of them I haven't necessarily talked to, but they're there on my LinkedIn for however long. And when I reach out to them, it's a personal message. It's not some clumsy cut and paste. I've even told people off for their clumsy cut and paste. I'm like, I don't want to be mean, but as a publicist, this is a really clumsy outreach. You should be a little like I've had on LinkedIn people message me, and if you even look at my profile for a second, I'm not in a 9 to 5 job. I own my own company. It's clear. And yet I get messages from LinkedIn. Oh, you want to work from home? Sick of the 9 to 5? Contact me. I can help you. Or like, or once I had a publicist message me, and I thought they were, at first I didn't realize they were publicists. They're messaging me, oh, let's talk about PR for business or something like that. And so I said, okay, let's book a time. I thought they were messaging me for PR. And so we're booking the time or whatever. Then something they said, I'm like, wait a minute, you're looking for PR, right? She's like, oh no, I provide PR. And I'm like, you didn't click on my page in LinkedIn where you contacted me and see that I'm literally an international award-winning publicist working across industries. And this is some like local junior publicist trying to find some work.
It's that whole pray and spray thing. You know what I mean?
I'm like, man, you've got to be a little careful. Like, so I'll go in, spend, don't just, that's ridiculous. Just go in and I would have gone into me, oh, hi, Tracy, I see you're an international, I see you're a publicist. Great. If there's anything I can help you with, like if you're a publicist wanting to reach out, or, like I'll reach out to people. I'll find, if I'm going to reach out to somebody, I'll know what they do and who they are and what film they're working on now. And then I'll message, hey, I think there's a connection here. If you ever want to chat, I think I could do this. You know what I mean? Not like, hey, we make websites. Like, how many times a day do you get a we make websites, or we can get your SEO? How many times a day do you get that?
Oh, I get it so much. And then I love when people message me, or because like when if I see you on LinkedIn, and if I see, hey, you got a new book coming out called Get Repped, I'm actually going to say, hey, Trace, it's nice to meet you. I would love to have you come on the show and talk about your book and talk about your mission.
Yeah,
To where it's not about me.
yeah.
It's
It's about
never
what you
about
can do
me.
for that person. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So talk to us about the story, because I've been chomping at the bit to find out about the story, but because I love human interest story, and I think that is an amazing. Can you please tell us little bit
About the
about that
Jimmy story,
story?
yeah. So my husband Dave Parkins and myself, we were like entry level sales, just doing our thing in our 20s. We were also activists. We'd had a radio show on college radio, just local college radio, a couple of years before that. And that radio show was no more, but we were still, it's called Uppercut. We were still, kind of information gathering and trying to change the world, like what you do in your 20s. And it was the early days of the internet in 1998. By the time we got our computer going and everything, and we thought, oh, we can still, even though we don't have the radio show anymore, we can still have a presence and we can still talk about things that matter and, do justice stuff. Um, activist stuff, not like criminal justice stuff. We had no idea about the criminal justice system in those days. It wasn't a part of our activist work. And in a little corner of the internet, we were making our webpage just looking for cool links to add to our page. We found this information about a guy who was claiming to be factually innocent on death row in Pennsylvania. And that wasn't part of our world. It wasn't activist work that we'd ever done. So we didn't know, the death penalty world at all. I don't know, people have asked, well, what made you get involved? And I think part of that reason is because not only were we activists, but because we'd had that radio show not long before. So we were still thinking of ourselves as, information gatherers. And so for some reason, we not only wrote an email, we wrote a letter. Because you couldn't email death row. We wrote a letter, put a stamp on it, went to the post office, mailed it, and sent it off to this stranger on death row asking, well, just what's this all about? How innocent can he be? And Jimmy Dennis got that letter and he wrote back 18 pages, single spaced on both sides, with all the legal documentation that was in his cell at the time. And even that was enough, even just that to show the description was way off from the offender. The few pages that he was able to send right then, we were like, wait a minute, this is really wrong. So then what do we do with that information? Because we're not lawyers, we're not publicists. We don't have 2 pennies to put together. We're just young, entry-level sales, whatever, you know what I mean? We're barely scraping by. But we've asked this person who's desperate for this information now. Why? Was it just for fun? So now that we have this information that we believe that he's innocent, we're like, oh my God, what do we do now? Again, we're not publicists. We don't have any money. We can't buy a lawyer. What do we do? So we thought, oh, okay, I guess we could put this on the internet. We were so naive at the time. We didn't even ask for permission, putting legal documents on the internet. We wrote them back, oh, look, we put this on the internet. On the what now? Anyway, so we sent him copies of the webpage, and our idea was basically if we put it up there, somebody who has more power than us or has, maybe a lawyer, somebody can help who's going to see it. We just spread the information and somebody can help. Well, that was the beginning of what became a 19-year campaign for us. It was the 6th year that he was already on death row when we met him. He was convicted in 1992 for a 1991 killing of a girl called Shadell Williams, who was, tragically shot for gold earrings outside of a Philadelphia subway station. And Jimmy, did not fit the description by height, by weight, by coloring. And that was only the beginning of that, the beginning entry point to what the case was so wrong. So anyway, we put all that information online. My husband learned to, make a web page. And I literally learned to write a press release on the Alta Vista because I thought, well, how can we get this out? Okay, well, I guess we got to tell the media. So I wrote a press release after learning, for immediate release, 3 paragraphs, contact information. And we sent that out around the world. And the first way, it didn't get a lot of attention in the States because back then there were no wrongful conviction podcasts. There was not, all that stuff didn't exist. Once the doors were shut, you were convicted and, good luck with that. But we got some attention around the world. We got everywhere from Turkey, believe it or not, to Holland, to Germany, to Australia. And slowly we got a little group of other, committed people, as committed as we were, probably about 20 strong. At different times, it was bigger and smaller, but about 20 strong that really became the support team. And Jimmy would call us. We still talk every day, by the way, now that he's free. Jimmy would call us, from prison for his 15-minute call every week because his family didn't have long distance. And he'd tell us, okay, can you do this, do that? Can you call my family? Can you let the girls know this? Can you let my mom know this? All that stuff. So we became his support system, as well as continuing to bring all this attention to the world, to let the world know what was going on. A couple of years into that, 3 years in 2001, the unicorns came, things that don't happen. It only happens in movies. The crusading lawyers that were looking for a case of actual factual innocence because of the work we'd done making so much noise for 3 years, when they were looking, a Washington law firm looking around the country for a case of factual innocence they could, put their pro bono team behind, which again doesn't happen very often. A lot of people told them Jimmy Dennis because of all the noise we made. And so then they started their work, which was a 17-year battle because that's how long it takes. And they started uncovering more and doing the courtroom thing and bringing him through the courts. And he was finally released in 2017. And now he's it's an even crazier story from there, because before he was convicted, he was just about to sign a music contract. He was an R&B artist as a young man, age 21. And the first thing he did when he came out pretty much was went right back into the recording studio, which is making history because there's no other artist who's been 25 years innocent on death row came out and started recording music. He's recorded a bunch, but he released 4 songs now. He's been on BET, Rolling Stone, Sirius FM, the media industry's taking him super seriously. There's conversations going on now about recording contracts, and not just as not as a novelty act, and movie contracts and all this crazy stuff. So, 20 years ago we were penniless salespeople, and by the time he gets out, we've somehow, because it hit me in what was it in 2011 when I was 41, 13 years after I wrote that press release for Jimmy. Hey, you know what? This media work that I've been doing, because we ended up on CNN, on MSNBC, on Court TV, all this stuff talking about the death penalty. As 28-year-old actives with no media history and no legal history, we're on all those major shows. And I realized that was just my messaging. So it hit me that I could utilize that those skills that I developed doing that advocacy work and kind of build a career out of it. Not the death penalty stuff. I would never want to get paid for that, but because that was activist work. But the skills that I used there, I could use to do what I do now: do messaging for businesses, for creatives, learn to, do what other people don't know how to do, which is get media attention. So by the time he came out, I'm a publicist and he's going back into the recording studio. So now we're like, okay, there you go. So isn't that funny? 20 years ago, you're some death row prisoner nobody's listening to, and we're penniless salespeople. And now you get out and go back into the recording studio. Now you're a acclaimed R&B artist, and wow, we're your PR team. So we joke that, like, it's funny. We've been his publicists for 25 years. We weren't even thinking about it that then. We weren't publicists. We weren't, media people. We were just activists trying to free him. And now we're like, okay, so now we're just, now we joke that our biggest problem now, like when he's PTSD or a little depressed or, because life is hard and 25 years on death row isn't no joke. I always get him laughing. I'm like, oh, well, our biggest problem right now is whether our gray is showing in the Zoom.
Yeah.
So.
I would definitely love to have him come on the show. So
that'd be amazing.
So now talk to us, because I love books. I'm only in ninth grade. I only have a 9th grade formal education, but I've read over 5,000 books in my lifetime, and I always have like 5 or 6 going. So
oh my God, you're like me. Yeah, I graduated from high school, but that was it. And I completely self-educated otherwise, and I never have. You don't see me without a book and a magazine in my pocket, in my purse, and another magazine in case I finish the first one.
So talk to us about Get Repped.
So I always wanted to write a book, always, and I thought it would be fiction. That's what I was. When I will one day, I guess. But Get Repped happened because one of my clients, Louis Nabayer, of Propriety Publishing, I helped her make her book a business bestseller, The 30% Solution, which is a business book about how civility in the workplace actually affects your bottom line and customer retention and employee retention. And we made that an Amazon business bestseller. And then she basically literally asked me to write the book on PR. So, and she's publishing it under Propriety Publishing. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. I've been doing it for about 3 years. It should have been done a long time ago, but busy publicist, I'll always stop that and start working on my clients' projects. So I'm just finishing it now, but yeah, that should be out by summer, and that's basically the same. It's the same audience as I've been doing all these podcasts for, which is primarily a business audience to make the entrepreneurs and executive understand why PR is necessary and why they should be considering PR.
I can't wait, and I hope I get a signed copy when
absolutely.
Because and usually when somebody sends me a book, and I also do a Facebook Live about the book also. So that's
very cool. Let's do that for sure then. Yeah.
Because I just love. I think because my book, it just I put it out last I think January, and on Monday I think it hit #1 for in Amazon Kindle on substance abuse.
Oh, that's brilliant. Oh,
And
wow, that's great.
and you know, it's amazing. Like a lot of people will put a book out and then they hear crickets because they don't realize that just putting a book out there and putting it on Amazon doesn't mean jack. You
Oh,
know,
exactly. You have to say, you have to promote it. And you know what I always say, and they get so disappointed too, because they put all their money and time and effort into that book, and that's their dream. And then they're like, well, how come no one's seeing it? Yeah, they don't. There's so many books out there just getting lost in the noise. That's why you have to promote it. And a lot of times those self-published, they say they're going to do marketing, but really I don't know what they do, because they really don't do the kind of marketing a publicist would do for your book, which is what it needs. And I know people are exhausted once they put that out, and they've spent all that money, and they're just like, oh. But it literally, if you just put a book out and then don't promote it, it's literally it's like having a baby and not feeding it, literally.
Yep. So now, if a person, okay, the last two questions. I know you got a great day ahead, and I get to hang out with my 9-year-old daughter today, and we're going to be doing that whole McDonald's things today. So, how do a person find you? How do we get in touch with you? And if they want to use you as their publicist, how do we find you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do work right across the English speaking world. So anywhere where there's English language media, I work. And I have more clients, stateside than I do in Canada, and I have clients all over the world. So yeah, please, I'm happy to do a 30-minute consult by phone or Zoom with anybody who wants to hear a little bit more, who maybe would like to be in media, but they're not sure if they could be. Absolutely. We mean you. Anybody could get in media. It's just a matter of, knowing how to do it. So yeah, you can reach me at lamorimedia.com. You can find me at LinkedIn is a great place to reach me, Tracy Lamori. On Instagram at Tracy Lamori PR Media, at Facebook, Tracy Lamori. And, just tell me that you saw me here or heard me here, and I'll be happy to do a consult.
And of course, I'm going to drop all your links in the liner notes and everything. And then when this comes out, I put this out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Tumblr. So this kind of LinkedIn, of course. So this will hit like 10 different platforms when it does come out.
Beautiful.
So my last question is, we live in a crazy world, COVID world, like we talked about earlier. We got grandparents that are homeschooling kids. We got parents that are driving Uber just trying to put food in their kids' mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So if I ask the average person to do something in 7 days, they're not likely to do it. But if I ask somebody to take an actionable step in the next 24 hours, they're more likely. So if somebody's business is struggling and they know that to be blunt, that their PR sucks, what can they do in the next 24 hours to start to right the ship?
Yeah. So number one, second thing I would do is send you to Haro to take a look at that, to kind of start to look through to get an idea. They help a reporter out and Source Bottle to get an idea of the kind of opportunities that are out there. But before you reach out to any of those media, because you can burn bridges as easily as you can build them, right? Make sure you have that pitch. So understand what a pitch is, and your little paragraph pitch is not your bio. It's what makes you compelling to media. It's a little thing you're sending media to tell them what makes you an interesting interview and the kind of things you could talk about. So, for example, when I send mine, I don't just send my little Tracy is an international award-winning publicist. People will be like, that's nice, who cares? It's got to be, why is that interesting to you? Why, who you are relevant? And then so you can maybe suggest a couple of things you can talk about in your field, something that you know about that other people don't know about, something of interest. So have a little elevator pitch, not just of your sales and what you do, but of who you are in terms of start thinking of yourself as a media expert on what you do. Right there, that mindset difference is huge, because most people don't think of them. They just do what they do. They don't think of themselves as an expert that can be imparting the information of what they do. But if you start doing that, that becomes a huge, you're used to marketing, that's better than marketing. So start thinking about yourself as an expert, understand that thought leadership thing. And all that means is being quoted about your expertise in avenues that exist. And so, first build up your confidence in your head to see yourself in that way, and then put that little paragraph pitch together, and then check out Help a Reporter Out. Do that, right after you listen to this podcast. Go take a look at it, see the kind of stuff, because as soon as you start looking through that, like you did, right, like I did, you'll be amazed at the opportunities. Everybody is. And then you'll start seeing what you could be, where you can be.
I love that. Tracy, thank you so much for hanging out today. I'm truly humbled and grateful. And I
Oh
think
gosh, thank you.
one difference between me and probably every other podcast out there in the world is um, our relationship just starts today. And I'm all about building lifetime relationships. So,
Nice, same. Yep, you never know how we'll be able to help each other, or just friendship helps each other.
yeah.
So like,
So thank you so much. Have an amazing weekend. And guys, if you need anything PR, definitely reach out to Tracy because she's going to turn your world around, turn your business around, and she's good people. So, Trace, thank you so much and have a beautiful weekend.
thank you. Take
All
good
right.
care.
God bless you.
Thank you for joining us today. Please hit subscribe and share. Please feel free to leave us a comment.